Welcome to The Sound of Economics. I'm Bryn Watkins. I'm pleased to bring you this podcast from Bruegel, the Brussels-based think tank specialised in economics and economic policy. Each episode explores one of Europe's big economic policy debates. We discuss why it's important and explore some of the work that Bruegel researchers have done in the area. In this episode, we're going to talk about innovation. Everyone seems to agree that innovation is vital for Europe's economy. But how do we get from smart ideas to economic growth? We'll discuss the meaning of innovation and its links to research and entrepreneurship. We'll also be asking whether Europe faces specific challenges in unlocking the growth potential of innovation, and what can European policymakers do to help? Let's start with a simple but fundamental question. Why does innovation matter for our economies? I asked Reinhilde Veugelers, a senior research fellow here at Bruegel.
So innovation actually is a very powerful source of growth because it also helps to get more out of the traditional labor and capital inputs that we already have. So it's definitely has, and we also see that in the data, has actually the most powerful long-term contribution for economic growth.
The main focus of Reinhilde's research is research. She investigates the links between primary research and growth. Now that can be research in a university or within a company. She then tries to assess the effectiveness of various policies that aim to support or encourage this research and development. Now, when we think about innovation, the first images that come to our minds are often scientists in white coats or shiny new smartphones. But innovation as a driver of economic growth is much more than this. When I asked Reinhilde about the ingredients of innovation, she didn't just focus on primary research. She stressed the interconnectedness that is needed to get from ideas to growth. Everything from stable labour markets to fair rules about intellectual property.
So you need a lot of different components within the innovation system. You need, first of all, of course, good ideas that can have a lot of commercial value. So you need people with the skills to develop these ideas. And that can be technological skills, but also entrepreneurial skills and scientific skills. You need also markets that are willing to take up these ideas and willing to pay for that. You also need all the complementary assets to bring these ideas to the market. So that requires sometimes manufacturing capabilities, service capabilities, but also access to finance in order to make that link. And then, of course, you also need good IP structures because the ones that generate these ideas also need to be able to capture the value enough to have the right incentives for investments. So overall, you need product markets that well function, financial markets that well function, labor markets that well function, education systems that work. Plus, these need to be connected sufficiently. So the ones with the ideas need to find the markets, need to find the finance. So the connection between all these different components is also very important. And also, if you don't have all these connections locally within your system, you need to be able to connect wherever they are. So if you have strong manufacturing capabilities, but you don't have the ideas, you need to be able to connect to where these top ideas have. So the connectedness of the system is also very important.
There is a lot of worry in Europe that this process, which takes a good idea and turns it into economic growth, is somehow blocked. We spoke with Dominique Guellec, Head of Science and Technology Policy in the Directorate of Science of the OECD. We asked him what he thought was the main weakness in the European innovation landscape.
Well, two main components in my view. First is Europe, and notably at the EU level, needs more science. Expenditure on science in Europe is very low, and Europe needs to get less fragmented.
Reinhilde agreed that Europe is facing real challenges, particularly in getting innovative processes out into the real economy.
It's particularly also on this adoption of existing technologies that Europe is also actually lagging behind. So we may have also very good innovative companies here, but in general, and particularly our small and medium-sized enterprises are not very good in adopting technologies that have already been elsewhere identified. So in that respect, yes, R&D is important for innovation, but we should also not forget about the diffusion of already existing technologies here and how they are used in our existing industrial structure, because there is a lot of scope for generating growth there as well.
But is EU-level policy the best way to promote innovation and unlock its growth potential? Scott Stern, Professor of Management of Technology at the MIT Sloan School of Management, thinks that Europe needs to think local if it really wants to get the full economic benefit of innovation.
The new agenda for European growth is going to be founded on the nurturing and growth of innovation-driven entrepreneurial ecosystems. Those are regional systems in which innovation is the seed corn, is the foundation by which new companies are able to grow, are able to be founded and scale quickly in order to drive regional prosperity as well as deliver a larger innovation dividend at scale. One of the kind of key distinguishing characteristics of the work that we've been doing over the past few years is first how much policy that is tailored to the region using a stakeholder approach at that regional level matters for really charting the growth of those innovation-driven entrepreneurial ecosystems. It's not enough to simply say, let's be the next Silicon Valley. Instead, you have to look carefully at what you have locally, understand what are the bottlenecks that local entrepreneurs and innovators face and how they can better come together, and as well, understand what's unique and different. How can you invest in your entrepreneurial comparative advantage? By bringing together stakeholder teams that are grounded in the real lives of innovators and entrepreneurs.
So, as we've heard, innovation is about a lot more than just good ideas and new technologies. I asked Karen Wilson, another senior fellow here at Bruegel, how she would define innovation.
Well, innovation is typically defined as being research and development, but innovation is actually much broader than that. It's about innovation in products, but also innovation in processes, in marketing, in organizational approaches. So innovation is very broad.
Karen works on issues around entrepreneurship, which is a vital step on the path from innovation to growth. This is another area where Europe seems to fare badly in comparison with other regions like the USA. I asked Karen whether she agrees with this and where Europe's weaknesses lie.
Europe does very well in terms of innovation, but has not been as strong at commercializing innovation. And for that, you really need entrepreneurship. You need entrepreneurs that can take innovations and can turn those into products and processes and companies and commercialize that innovation. And unfortunately, there's often a disconnect between innovation and entrepreneurship. On one hand, innovation policies tend to focus on increasing spending for R&D. Entrepreneurship policies tend to focus on SMEs, and there's no connection between the two. It's important to understand that there's a big difference between the small, medium-sized enterprises and high-growth firms. And the firms that create the jobs and that are able to translate innovation from the actual technology into products and jobs and firms are the high-growth firms.
There's an interesting difference in perspective between Reinhilde and Karen. Earlier, Reinhilde was stressing the need to get innovations adopted by SMEs in order to raise productivity across the economy. On the other hand, Karen highlights the importance of high-growth firms, which can rapidly generate jobs and wealth. I asked Karen what the EU can do to support these high-growth firms. Completing the single market was her first priority.
There are a lot of barriers for high-growth firms, the first one being the lack of a true single market across Europe. So these firms, to grow, they can't just grow within their own country. They need to be able to grow across borders. And that's still very complex in Europe. There are a lot of different rules and regulations in all of the different member countries. With the new digital single market, that certainly is helpful because a lot of these firms are digital-based, and if it's easier for those digital firms to grow across borders, that is a plus. But for other high-growth firms, that's really an issue. And we see that a lot of high-growth firms in Europe, they get started in one country, and then they move to the U.S. to scale up because they're not able to scale up in Europe because of the barriers of growing firms across borders. So I would say that is one of the first things that needs to be addressed, making it easier for firms to grow across Europe from a regulatory point of view.
Access to capital is also vital for innovative firms that want to expand. As Karen points out, European entrepreneurs and companies often struggle to access finance. Could the EU help to remedy this situation?
Access to capital is another very important key for high-growth firms. Europe is very reliant upon banks and bank financing. We really need to progress on the Capital Markets Union and broadening the access to finance for high-growth firms. These firms need access to equity. That means angel investment. It means venture capital. It also means equity crowdfunding in some cases. And Europe really lags behind in terms of access to and use of equity capital.
Reinhilde agrees that access to capital is vital, but she warns that funding for innovative growth in the economy needs to come from capital markets rather than ever-increasing government investment.
Now, typically what governments then do is they step up and they provide own funding to solve the problem here. So that could be okay, of course, in the short term, but in the end, that's just fighting symptoms. You really need to address what's causing this, and in order to have a more structural approach, you really need to work on the system here and to know why the financial markets are not taking up their role.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. Innovation is a hot topic in Europe, and I think we've heard why. It's about new ideas, better products, and more efficient ways of working, all of which are needed for economic growth. But the main insight is just how complex innovation is as an economic process. Turning a good idea into economic growth requires research and entrepreneurship. Businesses need access to finance and skilled labour, along with open markets for products and services. Europe has a lot of potential in innovation, but it also faces many challenges. The EU has to contribute, but the solutions will also be national and local. Thanks for listening to The Sound of Economics. If you're interested in more Bruegel work on innovation, there is a range of blogs and papers by Reinhilde, Karen and others available on our website at www.bruegel.org. I hope you'll join us again for The Sound of Economics. See you next time.